who does that product go to? Like, and how would you go about marketing it to them?
Not to make you a business owner.
Well, it also doesn't take that long. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the FIP Printing Pros podcast. Again, my name is Josh Dynison, your host, along with my co-host I got here, Chris Lockwood. Today, what we're going to be talking about is things that go wrong in a business that it cause it to fail and how you can avoid it and just things to look out for. And basically, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And hopefully this will help you avoid you falling into that failure in your business. To start off with, kind of, I guess what I wanted to first talk about is not even necessarily a business failing, but it's not even starting the business. That's kind of where where I kind of want to start. I don't know if you want to jump into that.
No, I mean, that's a good place to start. Like, you know, it's if you don't get started, then there's no way your business could succeed. And I think, you know, what causes people to, you know, they have a great idea. You know, you have this thought of, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to control my own destiny, or, you know, I want to be the boss, or whatever it is that causes people to have this idea of being a business person. But then you get so attracted to just that thought.
Yeah.
And you just never get started. You never take action. You know, there's the 1,001 excuses. Well, I got to learn how to do this. Or my absolute favorite, I got to set up my LLC. Creating an entity does not make you a business owner.
Well, it also doesn't take that long.
Right. Yeah. It's literally this big daunting thing that people think. And I've created, I don't know, 10, 15 LLCs in the past few years. And it's like, now it's like an email to the attorney that says, hey, I need you to create this entity.
Yeah.
And you don't even think about it again. And then, you know, so that doesn't legitimize you. But those are not the actual steps we're talking about getting started. So when you say getting started, what do you mean by that? Like, what are the things you actually have to do to get started being a business owner, being an entrepreneur?
Well, obviously, first the idea comes. That's where it first starts. You got to have the idea. And then from there, basically, you need to then figure out what are the steps it takes in that process to get you there. So things like you said, you know, get an LLC created. Do you have the funding? That's honestly one of the biggest things. Do you have enough capital for whatever you're trying to start that you can even do it? Because whatever the business you're trying to start, does it need inventory? Are you just like, is it already just something where you could get an online store and you're going through a wholesaler? You don't actually have to buy the inventory unless it sells. Like, you got to have all that kind of in mind to understand financially what you're looking at, and making sure you can get the finances or a loan. Whatever, there's a lot of those things that really come first, but you have to have the idea. Then you have to really figure out what are the things that it's going to take to get that idea off the ground and actually moving into action and make it happen. Then starting to build those steps out. But one thing I think that most entrepreneurs, or not even entrepreneurs, people that are starting to try to be an entrepreneur, get wrapped up in too much, and we've talked about this many times, is analysis paralysis, where I have a lot of people that have come to me with different ideas and try to ask me questions because of, you know, me getting into business. And I swear some of them have 20 different ideas, but they never actually settle on one. They just always have the ideas, but never actually take the action to do it because they're always thinking about all the different things involved in it, and then the ideas around it, but never actually do the action to actually take the steps to move forward. Yeah. And so they just sit in that repetitive cycle of I could do this, but then this, that, you know, then sometimes they just overthink it, or they're just not, they're when you can't think, you're always ADHD. Yeah. ADHD.
I know all about that. You know, so there's a couple of things you said that I want to touch on real quick. So number one, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and you're not getting started, so what are the things that you can do? Well, number one, you don't have to start a business from scratch.
Yeah.
That's number one. buy a business that's already operating.
That's what I did.
Yeah. And so like that cuts out like so much of the BS of like, well, do I have to have inventory? Do I need to do this? I need to just buy a business that's already there. Now, if you don't have the finances, find you a business owner who is operating a successful business and go to work for them.
Yep.
And make yourself invaluable to them. Ask questions, learn about that business. Be more than just a doer inside that business. Become someone who that owner is relying on. And then you can either take that knowledge to move into another business, or when the time is right and that owner wants to retire, that owner wants to move on and do something else, like you're right there, especially if the kids don't want to take over, they don't have other business partners or whatever. Don't think that you have to right away like create this business from scratch.
Yep.
I think that's an important thing. And the other thing, like I said, in order to get started, sometimes getting started is coming in on the ground floor, be an employee in a small business. Yes, it's not going to be as sexy or maybe pay as much as if you're working for a big corporation, but the opportunity to later on become a business owner, I think, is a lot higher than if you just go that corporate route.
Exactly. And I think going into, the next kind of one of the things that kind of, I think it kind of ties together a little bit, but it's a separate thing, in my opinion, of why businesses, fail, is they go into the business with no business plan created. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't feel like I, sat down and like had every step mapped out or anything like that. But I had a general concept. I had a general idea of like how I wanted to handle things. And for me, I didn't know everything about my business anyways, but as long as you got the general concept of business in general and like how it could work, the rest you can figure out along the way. But what you should be doing is kind of what we were doing now, like one of the episodes we just did a couple episodes ago, talking about building that structures and building out the SOPs and all the different things that you need to do in a business. That can happen later on, but initially you do need to have a general business plan in place.
Yeah. And what so everyone understands what we're talking about when we say business plan, right? This isn't a complicated document that lines out minute by minute, day by day, person by person, position by position, what's going to happen. That's not a business plan, right? Those are your SOPs. Those are your standing operating procedures, those kinds of things. When we're talking about a business plan, you kind of start with the long-term goal. What's the vision 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because you got to be able to plan for that. And then you start backwards planning from there. Okay, well, I know I need to have inventory. So how many days in advance of inventory do I need to have? Well, I need to be able to fill orders within 7 days. So I need to have, 7 to 10 days worth of inventory. Okay, well, how much inventory do I need? Well, if I get 5 orders a day, then and so you're really getting these broad strokes of the things that are going to happen. You're not getting into those, well, I need to have 1,000 widgets. Or like that's going to come with time.
Yep.
But you need to have some inventory. You need to have some kind of marketing. You're not, and we're going to touch on this later, but who's the most important person I need to help me with this? Maybe it's my spouse, maybe it's a business partner. But what are the projections on what that person is going to be able to do and how much money that's going to bring in? Because if you have to get financing, bank is going to want to know all this. What's your experience? Well, I don't have any experience running a business. Okay, but what is your experience?
Yeah.
Well, I've managed this many people. I've done this or I've done that. So all of those things are part of the business plan. And when you can go on Google, you can look it up on YouTube. I think we put together in that Entrepreneurial thing we went to, and it was like, I want to say there was like 7 sections on this. It was like 1 page. And it was like, who's my market? How much money do I need? What is my marketing plan? And it was like 7 sections, and it was really, really basic, but that's really all you need for a business plan.
Yep.
Some people don't even go that far.
I mean, you have to break it down a little bit more. Could depend on if you're getting a loan, because some banks will want a more detailed business plan. But for the most part, those sections are the main sections, and you just kind of really have to dive deep into them, type of thing.
Yeah. So especially when we're talking about the financials and stuff like that, and a lot of times, banks are going to want to see some history of doing business. So that means you got to bootstrap it. That means, you pre-sell, like, for example, I do some woodworking. So if I don't have the money to buy the material to build a thing, I have to pre-sell it and I have to collect that money. Then I have to go buy the material and then I build it. And then the person comes and gets it. Well, now I got a little bit of profit. So now I can build the next one before it's sold. And so, sometimes you have to work it that way. But if you just go into it with no idea what you're going to do, no plan, no nothing, that's going to hurt you. And I think some of the things coming up next, especially know your target market, right? That's part of that business plan. Who's your market? Who are you selling to?
And if you don't know that you may not even fully know every aspect of that, but you should have a general idea. So like for us, obviously we're B2B. We could have every type of business out there. And that is typically our general concept, is that we work with any business that needs type of stuff. However, it is good to really try to understand specifically who are the top people that you need to try to target, and who you need to, because especially if you're just starting from scratch, you need to hit it right in the beginning. Like you can't just generalize, because if you go say, every business, but not every, so for our business in particular, printing, not every business has that kind of budget or need to spend in that. Grocery stores don't necessarily do, they do some things, but for the most part, it's just a brick and mortar. They don't really do much physical advertising with that, Some do, but not most of them don't, So like, for instance, that wouldn't be my first go-to. Like I need to focus on a company that they rely on marketing materials to put it out there, and they're going to these different events and things like that. Those are the type of things you kind of have to understand, what your specific business you're going into, what you need to sell. Also, is it a consumer, and what is your consumer specific needs? Like if it's a product, who does that product go to, like, and how would you go about marketing it to them? Basically understanding all those different things.
What's that saying? The riches are in the niches, right? You take some service industries, right? Plumbers. Everybody at some point is going to need a plumber. If you've got water coming into your dwelling, there's a chance you're going to need a plumber. But plumbers, you have to think about who's my customer. Well, in Ocala, from one side of Ocala, Florida to the other, it's like 45 minutes, sometimes longer, depending on traffic, right? So you can't just say I'm Ocala's plumber, because you're too far spread out. But if you are hey, I focus on, my business is focused on commercial plumbing in the downtown area. Believe me, there's enough business for you there that is your market. Or, hey, I want to focus on new construction. I don't want to do day-to-day emergency plumbing, unclogging toilets, stuff like that. My focus is on new builds, contractors. So now I'm looking at contractors, or, so when you're thinking about who your target market is, you really want to dig down as deep as you can, because if you're spread too thin, you're going to be running yourself mad with doing that stuff. Handyman's the same thing. I got a couple friends that are, they want to have a handyman business. And so it's kind of put it out there. I want to, I do handyman work. Well, for who and for what? We got retirement communities here that you could make a living in 3 neighborhoods. Because there's enough people who don't want to put up ceiling fans, or they, their screen doors broke, or
trim
whatever.
Hedges, whatever the case may be.
Whatever it is. Or like in the new construction, I see it all the time on my Facebook page. And for my neighborhood, there's like 300 houses or something, 600 houses, something like that in our neighborhood. It's a new neighborhood. And so every time, it was like, hey, who knows someone who can help me hang ceiling fans?
Yeah.
And there's like 5 or 6 of those posts a day. And it's like, man, if there was a handyman in the neighborhood, you don't even have to leave your street to do it. But you got to know your market, and you got to be able to market towards it.
And most of those communities have their different pages on Facebook and things like that you can really get on.
Yeah, I think spreading yourself, knowing your market also comes to spreading yourself too thin.
Yep.
Or not targeting people directly in order to find because you don't need a plumber every day.
Yeah.
But when you need one, you want people to think about you. So you gotta be able to target, the correct way and all that kind of stuff too. So
speaking of plumbers, you have a kind of a saying that goes with one of the other reasons why businesses fail. And you always say that you could be one of the best plumbers, but are you a good businessman? Or you said something to that effect.
It's being the expert business or being the expert plumber doesn't make you the expert businessman.
Yeah.
And I think you see it a lot in the trades. People are like, oh, you should start your own business, right? Because you're really good with people and you really know your stuff and you're fair and you come in and get things done. But when you're the person doing it, when you're the doer, if you don't understand the business side of it, how much does it cost to have the marketing? How much does it cost to do your taxes? I mean, I've personally known people that were really good mechanics, and they started their own mechanic shop, and they were doing really good until around March 15th, in tax time, and then they're like, I didn't keep any receipts.
Yep.
I didn't do any of this. I didn't do any of that. I just paid my people under the table. And, they're a year in and they're doing really good business, but now they're out of business because they owe $50, $60, $100,000 in taxes and they didn't plan for it. Or, the rent didn't get paid on the place because they're not thinking about the business part of it.
Yep.
So, that's a huge reason businesses fail.
Well, they also, you got to think too, some of the plumbers are, or electricians, whatever the case may be. I'm just thinking service industry, they don't always have the personality to be, the other part of the business, the sales, the whatever, like they're just good at what they do. They're not good with talking to people and things like that. And that kind of goes hand in hand with each other, especially if you're the business owner, the plumber, and the sales guy. Like you got to have all that together, that you have the personality. It doesn't always work for everybody. And then the other thing that really kind of goes in that is they, with them being the expert plumber, they also don't maybe understand where they need to price things and whatever, so they then, don't price things properly, or maybe they're too nice and they don't have the business acumen to like, oh, this ended up being an extra thing that I had to do. Oh, I'll just give it to you for free, just kind of being Mr. Nice Guy. And then that kind of, really, and don't get me wrong. Yes, as a business owner, if you can be nice, but, also it can ruin your business if you don't charge properly and, your time, which that's another thing that it actually causes. And another point that I have is how reasons why businesses fail is they don't charge enough. They discount their services too much, or in the beginning, we're actually, because I've mentioned in other episodes that I've actually started a wholesale division of what we're doing with my business now. And I'm already realizing that I came in too low of my prices because I've already had a couple customers say, oh, wow, that's really good pricing. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to bump that up a little bit. But, for me, it's not such a big deal on that aspect because I already have the main retail side. So I already have coverage and this is an extra. However, let's say that wholesale business was the first thing I started. I could have hurt myself hardcore because I came in too low, left so much money on the table, and then not realizing, like we talked about, the plumber or whoever, they don't know how to properly price something. and then all of a sudden taxes hit, then payroll, then
Yeah.
electricity, there's gas, there's all these things that then now come into play that you were not factoring into everything, and now
in your time.
And just time in general.
Your time, your expertise, and that's something that, my woodworking and in my consulting and stuff like that is it's so hard for some people to understand the value of their time.
Yeah.
And it's easy to factor cost of material. It's easy to factor a lot of those things, but some people have a really hard time saying this is what my time is worth. And, you can undercharge for your time.
Yep.
And people will take advantage of that, or you'll find yourself going, man, I'm working, 10, 12, 14 hours a day for less than when I worked for this other company.
Yep.
And never feel bad about I'll put it this way. If you think you're worth, $20 an hour, you need to charge $40 an hour. If you think you're worth $40 an hour, you need to charge $80 an hour. And I'm not saying it's always a double, but you always need to charge more than what you think you're worth so that you'll get close to getting what you are worth.
Yep.
There's 1,000 different schools of thought on how you figure that out, but essentially probably the best way to do it is when someone agrees to your price, tell the next person it's more. And eventually you're going to find the place where people are like,
too far.
You went too far. And it's like, okay, let me back off just below that. Now I know I'm at the right place.
And for the most part, depending on the situation, you can't always, because maybe you're just putting a one-time bid and that's all they'll accept. But a lot of times you can go in at a price, somebody says no, too much. I'm like, then you can go back and okay, what would be fair for you or whatever, and try to figure it out. And then that's how you kind of figure it out. Or if you have, I'm very open, transparent with a lot of my customers and just talk with them like, hey, where do you need to be at? Like, where do I need to be at? What's other people? Are you able to give me another quote that other people are giving you? And so I know where I need to come in at, and I can tell you yes or no if I can come into that point. So a lot of it's just open communication, that relationship you build too with your people.
Yeah, and understand some people can't afford you.
Exactly.
That's just the reality. Some people just can't afford you. What was it? You can have it. You can have it quality. You can have it quickly. Or you can have it cheaply. But you can't have all three. You got to pick two.
2 or 3.
2 out of 3. And if you're getting all 3, then you're going to be paying for it again soon enough. So, but you're right there. As long as that wiggle room is there, but don't undercharge.
Yep.
For your services or for yourself.
Yep. One of the other things that I think that people do that really messes up their business is, especially in the beginning, not understanding, like you talked about inventories and levels and things like that when you're getting into a business, not understanding or overspending, thinking that you're actually going to do way more than what you end up doing because you have all these plans and I'm going to, I've seen it on TikTok and whatever. I'm going to be this millionaire super quick. So I better buy all this inventory because it's going to sell like a second when I put it on social media, not reality. And that's what shoots in the foot. Is the working capital is the main thing, is keeping that working capital, which goes hand in hand with either like, whether that be overspending on inventory or not having enough capital to handle a down month or a couple down months and things like that. And you didn't have enough built up in your reservoir that you can withstand those hits. Or like a COVID situation where everything got shut down. Handling just anything, whatever comes at you, that you're ready to handle it financially and you have the extra money in reserve to be prepared. That is one of the biggest reasons. It's probably honestly one of the top, if not the top, why businesses fail is not having enough capital. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other resource that goes along with that, your inventory of time. You only have so much. And as a matter of fact, I think this is on this list and it kind of goes into it. How you spend your time is very important. What are you spending your time? If you're spending your time dreaming, right? That's a bad waste of time.
Yep.
At the same time, if you're spending your time doing all the administrative tasks and those kind of things that you can either outsource for low cost, or you bring on a partner or your spouse or whatever, they can take some of those tasks away that free you up to do the other things. That's more, I'm not going to say more important, but more income producing.
Yeah.
Is, it goes right in hand with that of having the capital, is also how, not just having the capital, how you spend it, but how you spend your time too.
Yeah. I think it's not necessarily always what is most spending your time doing, like as far as cash flow. I was always taught, well, again, this is my YouTube mentors, just listening to them, is you do what you do best and outsource the rest.
Yeah.
And so if I'm really good at sales, that's my thing that I could really grow the company if I just get out there and sell type of thing. I shouldn't be doing the CPA stuff, the taxes, the payroll, all the different things that like you said, admin work basically, that is keeping me from doing more sales and growing the company, where I can just easily hire a bookkeeper or, CPA, whatever the case may be, for, a decent amount of price. You can get a bookkeeper for pretty cheap. But obviously in the beginning, that's, you solopreneur, you probably can't maybe afford that initially. So you do kind of have to do some of that stuff yourself, get a QuickBooks account or whatever, and then kind of do it yourself. But in that case, when you're a solopreneur, in my opinion, that's when you're just having to really grind. You're pretty much, I hate to say it, but basically you're going to have to work 9 to 5 doing the selling if that's what you're good at. And then at nighttime, you're going to do the extra admin work, because you can't, in order to grow the business, you can't stay focusing on admin 9 to 5. Like, that has to be focused on growing the company. Then afterwards is the extra stuff. And then once you get to a point that you can hire somebody then or outsource it, then that's when you move in that direction.
Yeah. And that's where it's important to set your structure up in from the beginning. And when you're that solopreneur, if your structure is, you have sales and marketing, you have production, and then you have admin.
Yep.
Well, your name is in all of those at the beginning, but then, your structure is there. And now you're figuring out, okay, if I was spending less time over here in the admin, and more time in the sales and marketing, then I can, now I can grow. So now I know that's the first place to expand or to outsource or whatever. Yeah. Or maybe it's production. If I had more time to produce this thing that I'm selling, then I had someone else that was doing the selling for me, because I'm the expert at producing. Yep. Well, then that's where I need to spend my time. So that's why it's important also and this goes back to the business plan too, is, what is your structure going to be so that the right places to grow at the right time?
Yep.
And so
that's pretty much how I kind of look at it too. The one thing that also goes with what we're talking about too is you got to be careful that you aren't growing too fast. Yeah. Like going back to the solopreneur, talking about that, and I want to be clear, like, I'm not trying to say everybody needs to be workaholic to be successful, but in the beginning, if you're starting, from scratch, that is honestly probably what you really have to be. You have to be that grinding to get it going. And then for the outsource side of it, you don't have to hire people. It could just be an outsourced, whether it's, like I said, the bookkeeping, but there's also a lot of other small things you can outsource. There's VAs, there's lots of things that you can outsource in the beginning so you can stay a solopreneur. You don't have to necessarily hire anybody. But obviously after a while, it would be nice, like for us, like we outsource, our digital marketing on some of the stuff that we're doing right now with social media. I outsource my CPA stuff. There's a lot of different things that I outsource, but I also have other employees that do the other things. But then what you do have to be careful with, and this goes to my next point, is that you're not growing too fast, because if you grow too fast, maybe you can't keep up with the demand because you can't fulfill orders. And then you have upset customers, bad reviews, all the things that go along with that. And then you get a bad reputation. Now you're not going to get further customers that are even going to want to work with you. Or two, maybe you grow so fast and you don't have enough employees to keep up with it.
Especially if it's something where it takes time to train people.
Yep.
So, and how would you mitigate? Because you want to grow fast. I don't want anybody to think that growing fast is not the target.
Yep.
But you don't want to outgrow your capabilities, I think is what you're trying to say.
Pretty much.
So how do you plan for that so when that growth does hit, you can keep up?
So I have to relate it to my current business because every business will be different. But you need to think ahead. You need to think, okay, right now, how high capacity could we go with the current volume of employees we have right now, and what would that look like? Okay, that's the max. Now, when we get to that breaking point of the max, how do I take care of this before I hire the next? Because you may not be financially ready, even though you're at the max and you're about to go to that next level. But you want to be careful that you don't just hire somebody and then realize, okay, now it didn't go beyond that, and now you have an extra income that you're paying that is not necessary. So my thought process on that is, for us specifically, my plan is if we grow beyond what current employees we have, I have outsourced partners that I can go through, wholesalers and things like that I can get some of our printed work done. And then so that gives us that little gap. And then when I get a solid 3 to 6 months of solid orders beyond that our max and I'm having to outsource, okay, now I know we can hire because it's consistent. So now let's hire, and then we can figure out at that point how many that looks like, what positions that looks like, things like that. And even like graphic design work, that's another thing in our business. We can always outsource graphic design. There's things out there, there's Fiverr, Upwork, and all the different things that are out there. Plus we have other people that we're connected with that we already do some outsourcing with if we get overwhelmed. So those are always having that backup contingency of like who you can outsource to, because there's always somebody you can outsource, whether it's VAs or just people you have made connections with at chamber events and different things like that. So that's my thought process. Before you fully hire, you need to make sure it is consistent work and you're figuring out how you can have the plan for the time being, how you can outsource it until it's consistent, and then you hire.
Well, and with that, I think having your structure in place, having those procedures in place, and sometimes it's not just the one hire. For example, for us, production, right? If we're, when we now know basically how long it should take at each step in the process for things to happen. Well, if we're getting backed up with this particular thing and it's over and over and over again, well, maybe it's not a full 8 hours a day that we need someone to relieve that pressure. But if we were to hire another salesperson further up the line, that's going to produce now that when we do hire this person where we are getting, stuck, well, now instead of it being 4 hours worth of work, we're getting stuck a day. Now it is 8 hours. So it's not just that one hire. It's being able to look further up or down the chain of the process and saying, okay, this person's going to be a small relief here where we're getting held up. But if we hire one more person up here, that's going to really open up these things. And I like what you said earlier about, if you're not prepared for being able to fulfill orders, well, then you don't need to hire another salesperson.
Yep.
But if you are able to fulfill orders, and maybe maybe if instead of it taking 3 days to fulfill, now it's taking 6 days, well, I can hire a salesperson. And now I can also look downstream and say, well, I can hire another production person.
Yep.
But what I can't do is hire 10 salespeople and there's no way to fulfill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a bunch of orders, but I can't fulfill them.
Yep.
Same time, I can't hire 10 production people if there's nobody selling it. So being able to manage that flow properly, I think helps that problem you were talking about with growing too fast. But there's another part of that we didn't mention. It's also, and this is something I've noticed, and I think I took it for granted coming from the Army after 24 years. The ability for small business owners to lead and manage their people.
Yep.
I think there's a huge lack of training and mentorship for small business owners. And I don't think this one is on our list, but it should be.
Yep.
To be able to lead and manage people. Let me rephrase that. You don't manage people. You manage processes, you lead people. And a lot of people aren't equipped to do either one of those.
Well, I think it kind of ties into one of the things I was going to bring up is that you try to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And part of that is delegation, leading people, managing people, delegating to them, making sure, because a lot of times, and I don't feel like I struggle with this too bad. Honestly, I think I'm probably the opposite. I delegate and expect it to be done, and if it doesn't get done, you're frustrated. But some of that also is me not doing my part on maybe the leading and managing, and get the expectations of what exactly I expected of them, and instead of like just, all right, I just do it. I want you to just figure it out. Sometimes I'm bad about that, so like I have to challenge myself enough. Like, okay, did I give them really the full spectrum of what I really need to have them to do, the full scope of everything, and a lot of times that's on me, and then goes back to like, and I've been in plenty of leadership and management stuff within the military and being a police officer, but I still think there's aspects that you also in business are like slightly different, where you're not used to having to think about all the different things like that.
Yeah, it's something I don't think is talked about enough in what I call the civilian world outside of the military. Military leadership that's like one of the primary things we talk about all the time, and I don't think it's talked about in small business. And with that, and I've even told you this before, and this is another reason that small businesses fail. Is nobody is going to care as much about your business as you do as the owner.
Yep.
I don't care how good of an employee they are. I don't care, they're not going to care as much as you are. Because at the end of the day, best employee in the world is still an employee.
Yep.
And so, you saying that, I don't set those expectations and those kind of things. I don't know that it's so much that you haven't set the expectation, but have you communicated that expectation in a way that they understand?
Yep.
Because how we think of things and how we set the expectations for ourselves isn't necessarily communicated down to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because on Friday afternoon at 5:00, like, it's over. It's the weekend. We'll come back and think about this on Monday, right?
Yep.
But you, as the owner, are still thinking about it Friday night. You're still thinking about it Saturday morning. You're still thinking about Sunday, and you're like, why don't these people care like I do? Well, that's not what you pay them to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a great observation there.
Yeah. And then I think we got two more things I'm going to bring up. But the second to last thing that I think is important and why businesses fail is they do not adapt and overcome. And there's many different factors that come into play with that. Maybe something like just shifting, and obviously this has been going on for 5-10 plus years now with the internet, but I think it's getting even more so with the Amazon world and things like that we're in now, where brick and mortar is not as popular. I mean, it is. But ultimately, at this point, if you haven't started a shift to try to get online, or if you're not already online, that's where a lot of businesses have failed. And I've seen it in our business for sure. Like a lot of the print industry is a lot of your older generation, and they don't want to have to learn how to get this online and do all that. And they're very strict in their ways. And then, they're just getting pummeled by the Vistaprints and things like that online. And even us, we're online, but we haven't really fully we're revamping our website right now, and that's hopefully in the next couple of months that'll be fully ready to launch, and then we'll be up there to be able to be competitive like that. However, right now we're feeling the effects of that because people are just going online super easy, going on the big $1 billion a year companies and spending their money there instead of keeping it, with a small business. And if a small business had an e-commerce platform, I'm sure that people would go to them rather than going to the big players,
Yeah, for sure.
So that's just an example of adapting and overcome in our industry, and honestly, probably most industries, getting online. And if you haven't done that already, but there's many other factors that might come up if hit a roadblock or, maybe, so like one thing we've pointed out and we've started to change in, our businesses, it wasn't working for productivity. For one of the steps in our process, we have to cut stuff down, which then leads to the next part of it where we have to finish the stuff, box it up, ship it out. And if it doesn't get cut down, then, there's it messes up the whole workflow.
Slows everything down. It's like putting a dam in the middle of a stream. Yeah.
Yeah. So we figured out that we need to, first thing in the morning, first 2 hours, that is the number one priority. Somebody is cutting stuff down on the minimum. Now, sometimes it takes way more than 2 hours, but at the minimum, they're getting cutting done before they go jump on their presses or anything like that, which now opens up bindery, and now to get that finished and out the door a lot quicker. So if we didn't adapt to that, we were starting to get things a little further behind than what our normal production timeframes we like to get out. We didn't really have many complaints, thankfully, but I don't like us to be going beyond what our normal production time is,
Well, it's not just that; it's also the stress on the team in the back.
Correct. Everything's now a rush because
everything, and then when you do have that actual rush that comes in, it's like, well, I'm already a day behind, and now you're putting 2 rush jobs on me.
Yeah,
that puts me 2 days behind. So that being able to adapt and make those changes is super important. And even if it's not part of your production that you have to adapt, it could be a product.
Yeah,
it could be a particular style of something, like green energy, right? That's like a big thing. Everybody wants to be green, so you don't, for a plumber. I keep going back to the plumber thing, but now instead of putting in just these regular toilets, now you got to put in the low flow, the high efficiency, and so you got to be able to adapt to that, to your customer demands.
Yep.
And if you don't, you're going to start, suffering and failing. So,
yeah.
All right, what's our last one? What's the last one on your list there?
So the last one is especially relevant, especially for right now in our times that we live in, because everybody's seeing on YouTube, all these people, like these podcasts we're doing right now, everybody's like, they think it's easy. And so they jump into business thinking it's going to be super easy. I'm just going to throw a website up and then kick back and then relax. And it's not that simple.
No.
Don't get me wrong. You might get lucky and maybe it will be that simple for you and great on you. But I would say 99.9% of the people, it's not that simple. So that would be the thing that I think that really kills people. So say, for instance, they think it's going to be that simple. They don't have to sell. They can just kick back and relax. They have no hustle, no drive, nothing to do anything, to put anything out there. They just set up something and just think it's going to happen.
Yeah, this isn't Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. No. You have to build it, then you have to maintain it, then you have to restructure it, and then you have to then sell it, and then you have to. There's a lot of things that go into that.
I can't remember who it was. I was listening to a podcast a couple months back, and they put it so it might have been Alex Hermosi. He said everyone sees me as an overnight success, but they don't see the 10 years that it took for me to be an overnight success.
Yep.
And, that is the reality of it. You don't see all the hard work, all the failure, all the highs and lows, all you see is all of a sudden this person's got it made, and it's like I wish, but you don't see the 15 times I started and failed and started and failed and started and failed until eventually the hard work paid off. And if you think that any business is going to be easy, you're crazy, because it does take work. Even the things that look like it's so easy, even the things that look like, oh, you're just making videos, right? Like all these YouTubers and stuff, like, oh, you just make videos. But actually go and listen when they're on another show, when they're talking about how many hours they work. Yeah, you know what? They made a lot of money off of that 2-minute long video, but the 36 hours that went into making it was a lot of work.
Also, the research they did prior to
The research they did, yes. All the things they had to learn to be able to do that. It's like that old story, the factory shuts down. And so they call a guy in to work on it. And he's there for about, they've had 4 or 5 people come in that can't fix it. And this guy comes in there, he's in there 10 minutes, makes a couple adjustments, and he goes, okay, that'll be $100,000. And they're like, whoa, you were here 15 minutes. He goes, you're not paying me for how long I'm here. You're paying me for the 20 years it took me to learn how to do that in 15 minutes.
Yep.
And that is the reality of what it takes to be successful in business.
Yep. And again, that part at the end, goes back to the proper pricing and understanding how to put that together with all your education and knowledge that you have over time.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that kind of ends, most of the, there's many other things that why businesses fail that we didn't touch on every single thing. But I came up with this list just from my experience, knowledge, and things I've heard from other people and put out there. And I thought these were the kind of the key things. So there's definitely many other reasons. But
I think if people put in the comments, some other reasons that business fail, we can do a part 2 of this.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely throw some comments out there if you got any other things that you think of. And I love to interact with everybody. But for the next episode, we will actually be having the genius behind this entire podcast, Andrew. He will be with Media Minds. And he's going to be our guest here and talk about his story and his journey, as well as just talking about digital marketing in general and how that can help businesses out. So tune in next time. And again, thank you for watching, and subscribe, like, and comment. And love to see you next time.
It's time to step up. Yeah, it's grind time. No more letting up. No, running faster, further. No more running up. Yeah, giving my all. No more giving up. Listen to me. Stand.